Distinguished guests, conventioneers one and all. Good morning and welcome to the 2024 Lions Youth of the Year National Final here in Darwin. What a wonderful city. This year we're celebrating the Lions Youth of the Year program Diamond Jubilee. Having started in the Q districts in 1964, the Quest, as it was known then, became a national project of Lions clubs 2 years later. It has run continuously for 60 years, having survived a few challenges along the way, not to mention the COVID pandemic of 2019. It's given a whole new meaning to the term BC, hasn't it? Knowing that the benefits to our young students who enter this program are so beneficial to their personal development, we're striving continuously to regrow the project and get back to the successful youth program it was through so many of those last 60 years. Friday morning we took the contestants on a tour of Darwin where they had time to get to know each other, and we had a chance to observe the group dynamics. You would never know they were a part of a competition. And tonight, or it's daytime, isn't it? This morning, out there out of sight, there's all 6 of them having this great big group hug. A competition. I wish it wasn't, but it is. But these 6 young people have got to the pinnacle, I believe, of what Lions Youth of the Year can offer. And becoming a national finalist here is one that only 6 students in Australia get that opportunity. The interviews were conducted yesterday where 70% of our scores were allocated. So now I'd like to introduce our 6 state winners and their respective state coordinator. So first speaking from South Australia and Northern Territory, Ella Smith and her state coordinator, Daryl Morley. Number 2, Grace Gregson from Tasmania with her state coordinator, Russell Cairns. Number 3, from the home of the Youth of the Year, Queensland, Cadence Taylor and her state coordinator, Narelle Gluer. And number 4, moving right across the other side of the country to West Australia, Digby House and his state coordinator, Margaret Am. Number 5, from Victoria, Oliver Bache with his district coordinator, Christy Box. And interestingly, number 6, William Hamill, last but no means the least, with his state coordinator, Peter Perry. I would like to just take this opportunity to recognise our state coordinators. They do an amazing job to get themselves here for this convention, to look after their charges and to get through travelling often the width and breadth of their state to organise and run their state finals. And of course without the state coordinators we wouldn't have such a great team of people who look after this particular project. So just please recognise all our state coordinators. Thank you. Now, we can't do this without the judges, so we enlist the help of some of our finest community leaders who are prepared to give freely of their time to judge and mentor these young contestants. So may I introduce our judges for 2024 in no particular order, just the way they popped up on my computer. So Catherine Hopgood. From what I've got here, from chef to teacher. Yeah, why not? Heather Prendergast. Heather's key goal in life is volunteering. Dr. Wendy Beresford Manning, in her own words, she was a board teacher. Nathan Franklin, this comes up a bit, born and bred in the Territory. And finally, Beth Lovell. Beth isn't in the directory. I started running out of time. Beth is another long-term Territorian. She's a counsellor with 20 years' experience in family and domestic therapy and counselling services. She's also a very skilled parenting coordinator and mediator. So, welcome. And finally, again, last but not least, Fred. Stand up, Fred. Fred was last year's national winner and as such has been invited to be a reserve judge and on the panel here. He also helps guide the judges in their dealing, and it is a very, very good part of the process because the knowledge from last year that all our national winners have is just so good, listening to him, talking to the judges and guiding them through the questions to ask and how to run the interviews, and of course he knows how the contestants feel. Thank you, Fred. I would like to now introduce our timekeepers, Margaret Am and Peter Perry. They will go to their spots in a minute. And the two chaperones, Christy Box and Daryl Morley. And our runner, the most youthful one of us all, Narelle. Moving on to the impromptu questions, the two contestants are all familiar with this following procedure, and I'll only read it once. I will read the question once and place a copy on the lectern. I will repeat the question and the time will begin at the end of me asking the question for the second time. The bell will sound at the end of 2 minutes and they should complete the sentence they are on. There is no requirement to speak for the full time, but you will get a penalty if you go over. There is no right or wrong answer. The order of speaking has been selected by ballot, and as they are sitting there. So our first speaker tonight to answer the impromptu questions is Ella. So Ella, would you like to come up here while the remaining contestants go out with Narelle out to the quiet space. Just while they're all moving out, instead of me standing here like a stunned mullet, I like to have a look at the questions that these young people were asked on their way here. And one of Ella's was, if you could make positive change affecting your high school, what would it be? Now, you're no longer at school, so has that changed your outlook on the...
Hello everyone. That was a good question and I quite enjoyed it the last time I was up on stage, and my answer was I'd like to change the school atmosphere, and that was probably the most passionate thing for me, to make school a happy place for everyone and to encourage everyone to get on board with everything school offers.
Thank you. Now, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely.
And I will go and get your question.
Wonderful. Hello again. As you may know, my name is Ella Smith and I graduated from Clare High School last year down in the mid-north of South Australia. Aspirations on the completion of Year 12. I am making the most of my gap year by being a baker at my local supermarket, but as of next year I plan to travel or possibly become a police officer, a politician, or pursue a career in ag. Lots of interests, I know, trying to narrow it down. As for hobbies and interests, I'm interested in everything. I love being outdoors, playing sports, socialising, meeting new people and learning absolutely everything I can. As for matters and causes that I'm passionate about, I am passionate about education in rural communities, volunteering, the climate change movement and the different cultures and lifestyles of those around the world.
Am I on? Yes. Ella, your first question. Can you lead from the back of the pack when you are not the leader? And how would you do that? Second reading. Can you lead from the back of the pack when you are not the leader? And how would you do that?
Can you lead from the back of the pack? Absolutely you can. It's not about being the leader and the face of a group that makes you become the best leader you can be. It's how you work behind the scenes that makes you a good leader. Being a part of my SRC groups at school, I found that it wasn't the head prefects that did the most leadership, it was the group behind them that encouraged them and enforced the goals that we had set at the start of the year that made things happen, and together we achieved great things. So if I was at the back of the pack, I would encourage them and give them advice and be someone to turn to and work as a team to help achieve the goals that we set to make anything in this world a better place.
Okay, Ella, your second question. Quote, "The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there," wrote L.P. Hartley in his 1953 novel. Do you think looking back might help us prepare for the future? The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. Do you think looking back might help us prepare for the future?
Being a part of a younger generation, I definitely look back at the future quite often through my grandparents, through my parents and the older members of my family, and I do see how they lived differently back then. It was a different world. And since things that this world has experienced, such as COVID and all the changes that we've made, technology and all those big things, it is a foreign country back then. Looking back, and if this would help us prepare for the future, absolutely it could. In the past, human nature was a big thing, and I strongly believe that in present day we have lost some of that. And looking back before technology and when people were kind to each other and outdoors and lived their lives the way they did, I think taking some of those traits and carrying them through to the future is a great way to strengthen community and the rest of the world in the future.
How's that? Thank you. You may take your seat. Our next speaker is Grace from Tassie. One of Grace's questions was about imagining being a tour guide in Tasmania. Please welcome Grace. Come on. Where are you?
This side.
Good. Grace, your question on being a tour guide, when we were in Tasmania last time, they didn't talk in distances, they all talked in time. We got off the boat and they go, where do we go? Oh, how far here? Oh, a couple of hours. Is that how it is down there?
Pretty much.
That's it? Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Grace Gregson. I'm currently studying in my final year at Hobart College in Tasmania. After that, I hope to go on to obtain a degree in international relations at the University of Melbourne. From there, I'd love to pursue a Juris Doctorate to practice corporate law. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you all for allowing me to be here to speak. My grandfather was a lifelong member of Lions in Canada, and the chance to connect with him through this competition and through your organisation is something that I'm eternally grateful for. That's me.
Lectern is yours.
Thank you.
So, Grace, your first question. Can you lead from the back of the pack when you are not the leader, and how? Can you lead from the back of the pack when you are not the leader, and how?
I'm a firm believer in the fact that leaders manifest in a multitude of ways. Of course, when we traditionally think of it, we think of figureheads standing behind a lectern like this one, telling us specifically what we ought do and what we ought not do. However, I think organizations like yours perfectly model to society that leadership is more than just standing behind a podium with instructions for people. It's modeling values. The way in which we lead is by showing people what they ought to do, not by telling them what they ought to do. To that extent, surely it's easier to lead not from the front, but from within. When we look at the word pack and leader, there's a delineation between the two. One can either be leading or be a part of the pack. To that extent, surely it's easier to be a part of the mass, to be a part of the community, to be together and therefore lead and model through our actions. Surely it's easier and better for society if we see an individual acting in a way that inspires us, if we see an individual offering a hand when somebody has fallen down, if we see people providing flood relief to their neighbours. That's behaviour that we desire to model, as to being told that we have to offer somebody a hand, that we have to help with relief. It's from our own communities that we find our best values. We find ourselves more inclined to act in a way that helps others when we ourselves want to, because we ourselves have been helped by members of our community, by members of our pack, as opposed to, and I can say this with certainty as a school student, having been told by somebody in a position of authority. I'm far more likely to act in a way that helps somebody if I've watched my teacher do the same, as opposed to if she stood up in front of a classroom as a leader and told me that I must do something. As a global community, it's the people around us that inspire us, that are part of our pack. Be careful, I'll start dancing again.
Your second question. The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there, wrote L.P. Hartley in his 1953 novel. Do you think looking back might help us prepare for the future? The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. Do you think looking back might help us prepare for the future?
Just because something is different doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. Just because we acted a certain way in our past, a way that we wouldn't act anymore, doesn't mean there aren't values to be learned from it. Perfectly looking at the idea of a foreign country, we live in increasingly globalized societies. Even if we don't do something in the Western world the same way it's done elsewhere, we share commonalities and values. We ought look at the way things are done overseas to understand how we can best apply the best of their values to Australia. Our history is, of course, marred with human tragedy. It has mistakes, like anything has mistakes, but it's also full of inspiring moments. It's full of people offering a hand to their neighbor. If we completely disregard our past, there's no way to learn from it. As a child, we're taught when we make a mistake to look back at what we've done. We look back at the mistakes we've made and we understand the steps that got us to them. We move forward from there. It's far more likely to work than if a child is just scolded. We ought do the same with our past. It's easy to point a finger at something that's happened in history and say that we would never do it again, say that we're blameless. But it means we don't learn from that mistake. A perfect example, when we look at countries that were fascist during World War II, we see press and media being shut down, a lack of freedom of information. It's easy now to point at that and say we would never do it again. But we live in a counterculture where it's very easy to shut down ideas we don't agree with. Perfect example, if we're using Facebook for news, it's catered to precisely what we want to see. We create, similar to that fascist media bubble, a media bubble in our own right that exists on our phones. There are organizations and there are individuals who look back at that and highlight the mistakes, and that's why we must look into our past.
Well done, Grace. Believe it or not, this was a genuine draw, but our next speaker is Cadence. We've got 3 girls and 3 boys. One of Cadence's questions was, Taylor Swift says, shake it off when things get hard. I have heard Taylor Swift. I'm not sure. Must be a young, yeah, please welcome. So, are you a fan of Taylor, are you?
I would like to hope so. With that question in particular, I did not show my true fan spirit because I started by singing a song which I thought was Taylor Swift, but it turns out it wasn't. So.
Good. we can all screw up quite easily. Would you like to introduce yourself? Yeah.
So, good morning everyone. Again, my name is Cadence Taylor and I'm honoured to stand here before you today as the Queensland representative of the Lions Youth of the Year National Final. As everyone was walking in today, it was such an honour to see so many Queensland Lions welcoming me, and I think I just have to say, most supportive state, guys, so thank you. So a little bit about myself. I'm really interested in the environment and its conservation. On the weekends, I try and find myself immersed in the environment as much as I possibly can, whether that's at the beach, snorkeling, doing coral watch, reef data collection, and then that environmental side of me has prompted me to look into my future as an environmental scientist. With this, I hope to study at the University of Queensland and either do an Advanced Bachelor of Science or a dual degree in Science and Business, specialising in environmental science. I believe this role as an environmental scientist in the resources industry will help me, help everyone in our society reach our Together to Zero goals.
Beautiful. Your first question. Can you lead from the back of the pack when you are not the leader, and how? Can you lead from the back of the pack when you are not the leader, and how?
You can definitely lead from the back of the pack. And in saying you can lead anywhere in the pack, the first thing that comes to mind when I see this question is sheepdog. They are the ones that are supporting everyone, making sure they're in the right path. Although we may have people standing out the front as our beacons, as our people we aspire to be, without those behind us holding us up and supporting us, we wouldn't be able to move in those directions that we aspire. An example of this is school. Although we may have school captains and we may have SRC members and all of those, we have other members of our school community that are just as integral to the success of a lot of our activities. For example, teachers. They often do not get the recognition they deserve, and some of them are often not seen as leaders in our school. But I'm here to tell you that anyone, even our teachers, even our fellow peers that don't think they are leaders. They are there to put in the hard yards, put in that supportive, driving effort to help support those around them achieve the goals that we all aspire to achieve. So, to answer the question, you can definitely lead from the back of the pack. We can all lead our packs in any way that we desire, but if it's forward, back, middle, side, we can all lead our packs. Thank you.
Okay, Cadence, your second question. The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there, wrote L.P. Hartley in his 1953 novel. Do you think looking back might help us prepare for the future? The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. Do you think looking back might help us prepare for the future?
Well, I think L.P. Hartley definitely got this one right. His words are definitely true. The past is a foreign country. Well, the past we might see as a foreign country, yet I think it's more of a reminder of the country we used to be. We have learnt so much from our past selves, whether it be through innovation or mateship or all of the above. If we look back at what we have achieved and what strategies we've implemented to achieve those goals, we can definitely prepare for the future. An example of this can be the coronavirus. Now, I know you're all probably sick of hearing about that damn virus that shut us all down. But, for example, if we had another strain of some contagious virus come through, we would be able to look at the strategies, not just from Australia, but all over the world, our other foreign countries, and see what strategies have been implemented most successfully to help Australia and our wider country succeed at protecting those most important to us. Another thing that has helped us prepare for the future is clearly innovation and technology. Australia has always had such strong manufacturing roots, and with that, we've always been encouraged to get out there and see what problems we need to fix as a nation. And Aussies, we're not scared of a challenge. We put in those hard yards and we do the work that needs to be done to fix these problems that are in our everyday society. With this hard work, determination and grit, we are achieving these goals. We are working through them. And looking back at that hard work is truly inspiring for us today and what we can achieve. It is a testament to our abilities. And if we can grab that with two hands and take that into our future, that's all that we need.
Well done, thank you. Our next speaker is Digby from WA. Digby had a question to discuss the statement, all zoos should be closed.
Pardon?
Didn't you?
Which one?
It's in your... Is that right?
No.
No? Oh, someone gave me the wrong paperwork. It sounded like a good question.
Sure,
though,
they should
wouldn't
close all the zoos. That sounds about right.
it? Yeah. Seemed pretty controversial to me. So I wonder what question you did get. Doesn't matter. You'll get one now anyway that you
Okay,
haven't seen
okay.
before. So do you want to introduce yourself to our wonderful audience?
Yeah.
Good on you.
So my name is Digby House, as you've already heard. I'm 17 years old and I go to Hale School in Perth, in WA. As you saw for the 2027 bid, Perth is one of the best places in Australia. Some of my hobbies, I play a lot of hockey and a lot of jazz. You'll be hearing about that in a little bit. And the career I want to pursue, I want to go into the field of law. I've got a pretty great role model in my brother. He's in final year of law over at Uni Melbourne. And so I would aspire to achieve what he's done and go to Uni Melbourne and study law there.
Okay, Digby, you haven't heard this one before, so. Can you lead from the back of the pack when you are not the leader, and how? Can you lead from the back of the pack when you are not the leader, and how?
For a little bit of context, I play field hockey, and in field hockey, I am a goalkeeper. And often when it comes to sports where there's the goalkeeper, they're often the slightly weirder member of the group, or the member who is maybe less a part of the leadership team. I know it was only this year that Australia hockey team had a goalkeeper captain one of their matches. But what I found playing hockey and being a goalkeeper was that it was an invaluable experience when it came to leading in a more sort of shadowed role. We as goalkeepers don't always get the limelight of the goal scorer who fist bumps the air when they score the winning goal, or who leads the walkout at the start of the game. But what I learnt over and over and over was, with my role, the most important thing I could do is to talk to boys one-on-one and to work with boys who are in the defence line or at halftime and take a more of a back foot role when it came to leading. And so it was an invaluable experience for me that showed me how you don't always have to be the one who is the loudest, the biggest, and the one in the spotlight all the time to have a profound impact on the team in their direction. And if you have a few quiet words here and there, put in the biggest effort and do your role as good as possible, you can always help lead a team.
Okay, your second question. The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there, wrote H.L.P. Hartley in his 1953 novel. Do you think looking back might help us prepare for the future? The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. Do you think looking back might help us prepare for the future?
There's always the age-old saying of history repeats itself, and I study modern history at school, and we've learned a various amount of things over the past couple of years, and the greatest example I can think of history repeating itself was the end of World War I and the subsequent start of World War II. The signing of the Treaty of Versailles was a pretty dictated peace by all measures that pretty much put Germany in its place post-World War I, and would eventually path the way for what was a Second World War where Germany led the opposition to say. And I think this is the most quintessential display of learning from the past and heeding what your actions do. It's apparent all across the world right now, international conflicts relevant everywhere, and aside from international conflicts, climate change and other numerous things that are occurring worldwide that affect all people everywhere. And it's incredibly important that we look in the past, as foreign as it may seem, as different as they may have spoken or as different as they may have acted, and heed what their actions were. After they finished World War II, the winners per se were much more cautious when it came to putting in rules, regulations, and signing treaties. They definitely didn't bury Germany in millions and millions of dollars of debt, and they definitely didn't put them in a position where they would resent them for decades to come. And this is a policy that we should 100% employ. We should 100% look at the past, regardless, as I said, of what they do enact, and heed their words, heed their actions, and maybe do things a bit more old-timey, so we don't maybe get the same outcome and start a World War III potentially.
Thank you, Digby. Our next speaker is Oliver, and I hope I've got this one right. Oliver, I believe Oliver was asked what I learned about being a parent. Was that right?
Yes, I was. Yes, I
excellent.
was.
Welcome, Oliver.
Hello, everyone.
My first question is there something we should know?
Well, look, it was a bit of a shock. I mean, our previous question had been, sort of discursive about zoos, so we were like, yeah, that's great. And then that happened.
Okay, good.
And look, the crowd got a good laugh. I think that's the main thing.
It is the main thing. It is. It definitely is, yes. No, great. So would you like to introduce yourself to our wonderful audience here tonight?
Hello, everyone. My name's Oliver. I'm 16. I'm from Albury, which is on the border between New South Wales and Victoria. Excellent. I hope to study economics and law at university once I finish school. I love playing music and being in bands and musical productions. I love playing basketball and coaching a team with that. Being a part of the school chess club is a great experience, and I'm the mayor of the local youth council, and I get to work with other younger members of the community through that, which is really good. I hope that I can advocate for peace through international statutes later in life, and I think that's something that I'm really interested in.
Don't run away yet.
I thought I was done. Okay.
You've done very well so far. So, would you like your first question?
I would very much like my first question.
Can you lead from the back of the pack when you are not the leader, and how? Can you lead from the back of the pack when you are not the leader, and how?
I've been in a lot of musical theatre productions over the years, and I've found that the best way to improve a show and to make it better is to work as a cohesive unit and a group to make it a successful production. A few years ago, we had a show at school, and there were 13 lead parts. Everyone had a song, and we all interacted on stage for pretty much the same amount of time. There was no leader, there was no one in charge. But through that group, we all worked together and became so much better. And I think I worked as a leader in that group, even though there were no formal positions and I wasn't at the front the whole time. I think that was possibly the best show we've ever done because of the way we interacted as a group. Another example of this is the local youth council in Albury. It's a great group, and we work really closely with the local community to do volunteer work and to make the Albury a better place for everybody. Last year, I was just a member of this council, and I think I worked really closely with the members of the executive and the other people on the council to improve the community for everyone and improve the experience for them. I think it is essential that leaders don't have just one style for leadership. They need to be able to come at problems from different angles and deal with the issues that they're going to come across with different solutions. Not every leader is going to stand at the front of the pack, and not every leader is going to be able to lead from the back of the pack, but I think it depends on the leader and the situation for them to create something that is worthwhile doing and something that works cohesively and produces something worth their time. I think that's all from me for that one. Thank you.
Your second question.
The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there, wrote L.P. Hartley in his 1953 novel. Do you think looking back might help us prepare for the future? The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. Do you think looking back might help us prepare for the future?
We know about issues because they have occurred before. We know about issues of discrimination, issues of war and disease and plague because they've happened in the past. We have experienced these things as a society and as an international community because they've happened before, and that's how we know how to deal with them. We have bodies such as the UN and the International Court of Justice as a result of previous conflicts. World War II led to the creation of some of these bodies, and they are how we regulate the world today. The past is a foreign country, and things are different, but that is a foreign country is still somewhere that we can learn from and something that we can move towards or away from depending on how we feel we must interact with it. For example, during the COVID pandemic, we knew how to deal with that disaster because we had had pandemics in the past. If we hadn't been exposed to that experience as a society, then we would have no idea how to deal with it. And that's how we move on and grow as a culture, I think. Looking back might help us prepare for the future. And I think everything is guesswork without data and without real experiences that have happened. And I think that's the best way to prepare for the future, is to look back and plan. I don't think I have very much more on that one either, so thank you very much.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
Now you may take your seat.
Thank you.
Okay. And now our final speaker, William. And I got asked, walking up here from when I finally rounded up all these people, have we got a question on AI tonight? And I said, you'll find out. Please welcome William. Now, William, you did get a question on AI, didn't you?
I did. Far too many questions on
Yeah.
AI.
And it's, in brackets here, it's got artificial intelligence. Using acronyms can be seriously dangerous, especially you're an agricultural college, and if someone said, what do you think about AI?
It's a great way to breed some good cows.
That's
That's what I'd say.
I was going to say it could be a load of bull, but... Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
I'd love to. My name's William Hamill, and I go to Farrer Memorial Agricultural High School. Upon completion of Year 12, I'd like to study a double degree in law and arts, majoring in international relations or politics. But if that fails, I'd love to go to Canada and be a riverkeeper for a year, because I absolutely love fishing. My hobbies and interests include rugby, fishing, cricket, debating, filmmaking and photography, and a lot of obscure sports like indoor cricket and table tennis. I'm most passionate about diminishing racism in rural areas and domestic violence, as next weekend I'm running a 24-hour fun run for domestic violence, and all funds raised will go to the Tamworth Women's Shelter, and those are my two biggest passions, so thank you.
Okay, William, your first question. Can you lead from the back of the pack when you are not the leader, and how? Can you lead from the back of the pack when you are not the leader, and how?
Well, I said yesterday in my interview that you don't need a badge or a title or a tie to say that you're a leader. All you need is a bit of charisma and knowing your people. The most important thing is knowing your people, and you can do that from the back of the pack and get to know everyone in your group. By not asking people to do things that you wouldn't do yourself, you can be a leader. It is better to be standing on level ground with your people and pushing them from behind than it is mustering them from the front. You can't muster a group of cattle in front of them. They will not follow you. You have to push them from the back. And that's the same with people. People need encouragement and a pat on the back to let them know that everything will be okay and everything is okay. To do this, you must have empathy. You must understand what people's emotions are, how they're feeling, and why they're feeling those things. Getting to know them, talking to people and communicating. Those are important aspects into how you can lead from the back of the pack. You don't need to be at the front yelling orders or giving orders, because you can be from the back working. I'll give you an example. We have a prefect body at my school for the boarding students. And there are prefects, there are seniors that don't have a prefect title, but they do more of a prefect job than the prefects do, because they go around asking junior students how they are, how they're feeling, and how they're finding boarding. That is a perfect example of, because you don't have a title, it doesn't mean you can get to know your people and lead from the back of the pack. So that is how you can lead from the back of the pack.
Your second question. The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there, wrote L.P. Hartley in his 1953 novel. Do you think looking back might help us prepare for the future? The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. Do you think looking back might help us prepare for the future?
Looking back has its benefits, because you can understand why things are the way they are now. But looking back doesn't entirely dictate your future. Your past does not dictate your future. There are many walks of life, but there are many nations that have been built on, and Australia is an example of this, a terrible past. There have been terrible aspects of our past, but it doesn't mean it dictates our future, but it can help us prepare for our future. Because it allows us to know where we went wrong or where we went right. And you can do this as an individual and look back in your life when you've made a mistake or something's gone horribly wrong, and you can think of ways to rectify that for future. Looking back can help us, because we can realize that the things we've done previous, the horrible, atrocious events, war crimes committed, slavery, things like that, we can avoid them in future simply by knowing and acknowledging that we did it. Because we cannot move forward as a society or individuals or as groups or as families or as friends if we don't acknowledge that we did the wrong thing. That must be acknowledged, and through that acknowledgement, we can rectify that and plan better in the future to avoid any further complications. So looking back can help us prepare for the future, but we should not dwell on it. We should not dwell on it, because dwelling on the past gets us nowhere. The preparation is where it's key to helping us gain a better future. Thank you.
My note here says, now that those challenging impromptu questions are out of the way, but I thought they were very, very good questions, so compliments to the judges for those. That was wonderful. And I think the answers across the board were exceptional. So now we come to the prepared speeches, and once again, the contestants are all familiar with the rules of this section. The time will start on the utterance of their first word. After 4 minutes, the bell will sound once, and a penalty is incurred. Thank you. If they do not proceed beyond 4.5 minutes. At the lapse of 5 minutes, the bell will sound twice. A penalty is incurred if they proceed beyond the completion of the current sentence after the elapse of that 5 minutes. So please welcome back to the lectern our first speaker, Ella.
Throughout my Lions Youth of the Year journey, some of you have got to know little Ella quite well. On each occasion, she has received a letter from Big Ella, filled with advice, pride, and a glimpse into growing up. Now has come the time where I and we shall bid little Ella farewell. My advice has only been to reach the end of little Ella's schooling journey, and now that I, Big Ella, have closed that chapter, it's time to let little Ella live out those years, while I spend my time navigating the world as Big Ella. Let's now read the final pages of the Little Ella chapter. Dear little Ella, I see that you have had your first day of reception. You may not know it yet, but you are about to embark on an unforgettable journey. Well, I'm writing to you as a big kid. I've now finished my schooling journey and have entered into the big wide world. Reflecting, I'd like to tell you about the journey, so you can carry my advice with you. I'll tell you about what to expect, what I've learnt, and how you should spend the upcoming years. Little Ella, what adventures you're about to undertake. Firstly, you must know that things don't and won't come easy. You will face challenges, you will be turned down, you will get injured, you won't receive the result you aimed for, and life will change unexpectedly. Plans will go south in the blink of an eye. Expect the unexpected. These times will be your biggest learning points. Keep in mind, though, where there is negativity, positivity is just around the corner. Keep that smile on your face, the smile that reflects kindness, excitement, and a zest for life, even if it has no front teeth. That smile will be appreciated. It will be used on all occasions, shown to every person you meet, and on display all day long. And yes, you will get your front teeth eventually. The experiences and opportunities that will come your way will be extraordinary. Don't ever take things for granted. Be grateful for what you have and who you have. Your success will come in all areas of your life. Be patient, work hard, train hard, but most importantly, just have fun. The relationships you make and friends you find throughout these years will stay with you forever. Together, you will have the time of your lives. You will laugh with each other, be disappointed together. You will support each other, you will grow together, and you will reflect on it all side by side at graduations. Cherish these moments, little Ella. They are what make the journey so memorable. You are going to be pushed outside of your comfort zone time and time again. You will network, meet new people, broaden your horizons, and find a love for learning about what you don't know. Remember, following in someone's footsteps is important, but don't be afraid to make your own trail. Find your own interests, like things that others don't, and be the best version of yourself you can be. Big things are going to come your way when you least expect them. Be present in these moments, little Ella. Treat every opportunity like it's once in a lifetime, and take the time to reflect on them afterwards. Look back at your journey so far. It may make you sad, but think about how much you have grown. Be proud of what you have achieved. Work hard, little Ella. Excel in everything you do. Determination will get you the results you desire. So remember, little Ella, live life passionately, laugh until your belly hurts, and never stop chasing those big dreams of yours. Lots of pride from Big Ella. P.S. Future Ella, when you get a chance, Also take a moment to reflect. Be grateful for the journey so far, whether that be your first day of reception or valuing all the skills you've learned as a Lions Youth of the Year member. This journey started small and has since become the most memorable experience yet. This Ella is loud, she is proud, and she is passionate. She has networked and connected and strengthened her value in community. I know you'll carry this experience with you, Big Ella, and be inspiring and motivating others to do the same. Do what you love, Big Ella, and do it the best you can. Be the change you wish to see, give that helping hand, and live that life of yours. Remember, little Ella is excited to be you, and elder Ella would have been proud to have walked those footsteps. Have courage, Big Ella. We all believe in you.
Would you please welcome Grace back to the lectern?
Working out where we belong is difficult at the best of times, and my slightly unconventional childhood made it all the more complex. As a Diplo brat, the term used for the children of expats, I was told that by giving up a permanent home, I would gain the whole world as my home. At the time, it felt like an imperfect platitude, but I've come to realize its truth. However, this realization certainly didn't happen overnight. I was born at the Royal Hobart Hospital and taken home to a house in the suburb of Tolman's Hill. However, we left before I could form any concrete memories. On my first birthday, we moved to Sydney. Coincidentally, this was also the day I decided to take my first steps, which I'm sure thrilled my parents as they tried to wrangle their toddler on the ferry ride over. We lived in a few different places in Sydney before finally settling in at 17 Palmerston Place, Seaforth. That home played host to so many of my childhood memories. It was there that I had my first tooth fairy visit, and it's the site of my family's first and only foray into DIY architecture. To this day, I believe that pagoda is held up with nothing more than quickset cement, super glue, and a whole lot of faith. My sense of belonging as a child was so tied to that house, which made it all the more complex when in my final term of grade 5, my parents sat me down and told me Dad had accepted a job posting in Moscow. My knowledge of Russia at the time was derived from a family holiday when I was 8, and if I'm being entirely honest, the film Anastasia. Hardly enough to foster a sense of connection. I cried almost the entire drive to Sydney Airport. But within the first few weeks, we found a routine. We'd go for Russian dumplings at the place across the road, and the babushkas, grandmothers, who were the receptionists in our apartment, would teach us basic phrases in Russian and praise us when we got them halfway right. I'd like to take a moment to try to excuse my terrible Russian. You see, Russian is derived from ancient Greek, which means I can say, it was all Greek to me. Interestingly, I found belonging in an environment completely different to the one I grew up in. I cried almost the entire drive to Moscow Airport when we moved to our next job posting in Amsterdam. Our life in Amsterdam was nothing short of magical. We lived in a 5-story Dutch canal house and cycled back from the grocery store with tulips in our bike baskets. It was in Amsterdam that I attended the International School of Amsterdam, ISA. Whilst here in Australia, it's unique that I've lived in 3 countries. At ISA, it was strange that I'd only lived in 3 countries. Most of my classmates spoke multiple languages, and very few people stayed at the school for more than a year. We celebrated something at ISA called Global Villages Day, an amalgamation of the multitude of national holidays celebrated by families at the school. It was on that day that I came to understand what belonging meant for me. Sitting on a cold gym floor, our head boy gave a speech. Whilst I couldn't tell you what he looked like, where he was from, or if I'm being honest, the bulk of what he said, I'll never forget his final message. He shared with us a realization he had come to after a childhood spent moving. He'd realized that not belonging to any one place wholly meant we could belong anywhere. Instead of tying our belonging to a physical place, us Diplo-brats belonged with our memories. We belonged with our families and communities, no matter how transient they were. Since moving back to Tasmania, I've had the privilege to learn about what belonging looks like for the Palawa people, Tasmania's First Nations people. Their belonging is derived from 40,000 plus years living on country. I have a deep respect for that belonging, but my belonging looks entirely different. I belong with my community, something which I'm sure you're all familiar with as Lions, as members of such a strong local, national, and international community. My sense of belonging is tied to my family. It's tied to the things I can learn in diverse environments. My slightly unconventional upbringing, to borrow the aforementioned platitude, has turned the whole world into my home, a place where I can find belonging. I can find belonging in entirely different places, because at the end of the day, people are the same almost everywhere. People are kind, even in the way that they're different. People are generous with their spirit and culture. That experience is something I will be eternally grateful for, and I would encourage anybody who has the chance to take the opportunity to learn from those around them, to learn from those in diverse environments, to take it.
So please welcome Cadence back to the lectern.
The stereotypical Aussie icons of a shrimp on the barbie and "G'day mate" may soon be coming extinct. Don't believe me? When was the last time that you cheered, "Aussie, Aussie, Aussie"? Gee guys, bit slow there. We'll come back to that later, but even this proves that you may be at risk of becoming un-Australian. I am ashamed to see what our nation is becoming through the growing trends of being woke and a myriad of external influences like social media and political correctness. We have ultimately lost touch with our core values like our laid-back culture, fair go for all attitude, and mateship, which I think we can all agree are basically the values Australia is built on. Although we have moved with the times, this increase in many outlandish actions has truly jeopardised what it means to be Australian. Well, firstly, to be Australian, you must embrace our iconic laid-back attitude that can be summarised by 6 short words. No worries, mate, she'll be right. This saying has transcended generations, yet I'm questioning if she will be all right, as research from the Pew Research Centre shows that over 57% of people today are too easily offended by what others say. This is over half our country. This, in conjunction with the ever-growing restraints of political correctness, has really made us hold our tongues. Another quality that has transcended generations is our fair go for all attitude, which encompasses strong multiculturalism, equality, and opportunity for all. However, according to All Together Now, last year, 1 in 5 people living in Australia were a target of racial discrimination. This is ridiculous. How can we pride ourselves on being a friendly and welcoming country, yet be so alarmingly full of hate and discrimination? Our friendliness is intrinsically linked to our mateship, and according to Tourism Australia, mateship is the beating heart of the Aussie spirit. It's practically a national trait. Aussies pride themselves on being good friends and neighbours, and not just to people they know. Yet I think this representation couldn't be further from the truth, as data from the Relationship Indicators 2022 report shows that 28% are experiencing social loneliness, and 1.7 million feel unsafe when disagreeing with someone. To me, this does not embody the equality, loyalty, and friendship that mateship is built on. This disgrace of our Aussie spirit can be blamed on the influence of social media. It has caused us to become shy and timid Australians that hide behind their phones. This influences how we can make connections and can impact our ability to learn important social cues, face-to-face communication, grow confidence, and can cause callousness and high anxiety. Do we want our future to be filled with people who can't have an honest conversation without being obnoxious or frightened? Being social is our way of life, with our backyard cricket, barbecues with the fam, and long walks on the beach. But these are all slowly just becoming memories that pop up on our phones, which we carelessly swipe away. And you know who else we swipe away? People. We as a nation are becoming less helpful, but you might not think you're responsible of such a foul act. But how many times have you avoided eye contact or walked away from a homeless person? How much junk mail from charities requesting financial contributions have you just ignored or tossed in the trash without a second thought? And how often have you been too busy to volunteer your time at a local event, sporting club, or school? Doesn't this sound familiar? To me, this doesn't sound like the Aussie spirit brimming with the essence of mateship. Overall, this notion has changed significantly in Australia. We are more alone, less helpful, and less friendly than ever. We pride ourselves on mateship being our beating heart, but if it isn't, then what is? Nothing? Are we turning into a cold, heartless nation? This is the inevitable fate that we face if we don't do something to fix this. We need to save our identity. We need to retain what is unique and precious about our beautiful Australian framework. We need to change these social media-driven trends and overall un-Australianism to fix this negative perception we have created for ourselves. We need to take a serious look at this behaviour and consider how it is ruining us and what changes we need to make to restore our true Australian identity. So say it loud and say it proud. Aussie, Aussie, Aussie!
Please welcome Digby to the lectern.
A one, a two, a 1, 2, 3. A dum 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 dum. Hello. You probably think I'm a little bit weird, but what I just sung, or attempted to sing, was a blues bass line. Played on the big double bass, it charts the chords for a jazz band to navigate a 12-bar blues. Now, music for me started back in year 2. I was the only boy who sang, and I loved it. When I changed schools in year 4, I started to learn some new instruments. The violin. It was a little bit too serious. The French horn. Brass wasn't my cup of tea. But finally, in year 6, the saxophone. I loved it. And for someone who had a lot of energy in junior school and often caused a little bit too much mischief for myself, music was a great place to channel all my energy into something that was pretty positive. Now, The first time I heard jazz, I was sitting in this big circle of boys with hand-me-down shirts and instruments that looked comically large. Centered to us stood this short, slightly balding, innocuous-looking man. He lifted up his trumpet and played this piercing melody. I'm not going to sing it. But he told us all to keep playing, and we played for a little while. After a bit, he gestured towards me. Saxes, solo. I stood up nervously, took a deep breath, and played the worst solo in jazz history. But as I closed my eyes and fumbled over each key on my saxophone, I entered a sort of trance. And this was life-changing. But why was it life-changing, and what did I learn, and what could you learn? Well, there are 3 amazing takeaways from music, and jazz in particular. First, music is an amazing place to learn about teamwork and leadership. One of the most important skills you learn as a musician is listening. I like to say we develop something called big ears. When you play in music, you have to know your own part and how it sounds, as well as your other band's parts and how their sounds, and listen when you play to make them blend together. The more and more I played, I noticed the better and better my active listening skills got. And this translated into so many other aspects of my life as a team member. And on the other side of the coin, jazz in particular is an amazing place for leadership. The special thing about jazz is solos. Every member of the band gets their time to step into their spotlight, contribute ideas to the band, lead the band in directions, and practice their communication with a tap on the head or a wag of the finger. And it develops their leadership skills amazingly. Now, the second thing for me was resilience. In sports and academics, I'd always struggled to grasp the idea. When I would watch a ball go in the back of the net playing hockey, I'd drop my head. Or if I got a slightly bad mark on my test, I'd be a bit disheartened. But when I stopped, and I really thought about what I was taught as a jazz musician, the very, very first thing you're told, if you make a mistake when you solo, even if you completely stop, just keep playing. I mean, it really was that simple. So when I reflected again and I put it into practice, the next time that same ball went in the back of the net, or I got that same bad test mark, if I just kept playing, it would work out more or less. And as I mentioned earlier, the third point is that jazz was an escape for me. So many of us lead busy, hectic, and completely draining lives, and it's really easy to complain about how hard they can be. But the best thing you can do is have solutions and escapes. So for me, when my stress is the highest or the lowest, and my mental health is the best or the worst, every time I press play on that 200-hour-long jazz playlist, hum to myself, or if I'm feeling particularly productive, actually practice, I get that very same escape I did back in year 7. So as you can see, I'm a little bit of a fan of jazz. So in that vein of thought, I challenge all of you, go try some jazz. If you're daring and brave, pick up an instrument or use your voice and sing along. But if you're not quite there yet, go listen to some. If you're in Perth, the Ellington Jazz Club and downstairs at the Majesty are some of the best live jazz locations in Australia, I think. But if you're completely resistant and you don't want to play jazz at all, that is perfectly okay. I want to leave you with a little challenge. When you fly home or drive home for some of the locals, I want you to think about what your jazz is. What's your teacher, your enjoyment, and your key to a strong mental health? If you've already got it, amazing. Take as much out of it as possible. Chess, bowling, or tennis. Try and learn as many lessons as you can. If you haven't, go and look for it. But as soon as you find it, share your jazz to as many people as possible. So, go out, have fun, make a bunch of mistakes, and find your jazz.
Please welcome Oliver back to the lectern.
I recently travelled to Singapore as a part of the Premier Zanzak Memorial Scholarship, and I came away from this experience with a new way of looking at commemoration. While it's well known that Australia fought in the Second World War, especially in Europe and the northeast of France, there is also significant history of conflict in the Pacific, and this conflict had a profound impact on Australian soldiers, and it even led to the deaths of more than 200 Australians on home soil here in Darwin. Australian soldiers were posted to defend Singapore from a looming Japanese invasion, alongside Indian and British soldiers under the command of English officers. There were between 85 and 90,000 Allied troops at Singapore, but when the significantly smaller 65,000 Japanese landed on the 8th of February, it took them 7 days, 1 week, to capture all of Singapore. This led to the capture of around 15,000 Australians as prisoners of war and the deaths of 2,000 Australian soldiers. The fall of Singapore had a massive impact on Australia. In the words of John Curtin, the Prime Minister at the time, "The fall of Singapore opens the battle for Australia." Today, I'd like to tell the story of one of those Australians who was captured at Singapore as a prisoner of war. Lieutenant Colonel Reginald William James Newton was born in Balmain in 1901 and served in the Australian Imperial Force during the Second World War. He was captured as a prisoner of war during the fall of Singapore, and he became renowned for the way he protected the Australians under his command. His military journey began when he enlisted as a camp cadet at Coonabarabran in 1922, but by the outbreak of the Second World War, he was a militia captain in what we would now call the Army Reserve. Newton was sent to Singapore early in 1941 as a company commander. 11 months after he arrived, the Japanese invasion took place. Reggie fought in the Battle of Moi, and following the Allied surrender at the old Ford factory, he and his men escaped into the swamps of Singapore for 2 weeks. They were captured and taken to Pudu prison in Kuala Lumpur, where Reggie, as the highest-ranking Australian at that prison, faced a grueling 60 hours of torture and interrogation at the hands of the Japanese. Reggie Newton was briefly transferred to the notorious Changi prison some months after his capture, but he was appointed to his notable role in March of 1943, and that was as the commanding officer of U Battalion, a part of D Force, sent to work on the Burma-Thai Railway. This was not a military position. Reggie was still a prisoner, but he was in charge of 660 Australians as they worked on the railroad. Here, Newton earned his nickname Roaring Reggie from the way he fought with his captors. There's a story in one of his obituaries about the way that Reggie would walk into one end of a POW hut and the Japanese would run out the other end with cries of, "Ah, #1 Australian." An anecdote told at his funeral talked about the way he used to reprimand his captors if their uniform was untidy. Newton is remembered for the way he stood up for the rights of his fellow prisoners, and he was called in a Sydney Morning Herald obituary the protector of death railway prisoners of war. On the 1st of July 1944, Reggie Newton led 2,250 Australians, dubbed Newton Force, as they left Thailand for Japan. They worked around the Ohama camp in Japan until the end of the war. After World War II, Reggie worked tirelessly as an advocate for prisoners of war. He was awarded a British Empire Medal for his service in 1947. Overall, Reginald Newton was renowned for the way he stood up for those under his protection and defied the Japanese, making a significant impact on those he was commanding. But why does this matter? I truly believe that remembering our past is incredibly important and that we should commemorate those who gave their lives. A major part of this memorial tour that I went on was exploring memorial sites across Singapore and the Northern Territory. And there was one site that left a lasting impact on me. This was the Commonwealth War Cemetery in Singapore, known by the locals as the Kranji War Graves. I led a memorial service at this site, and to finish off, I'd like to read something that I wrote for that service. We remember the heroes, those that fought, those that died, those that suffered years of brutality as POWs. Some heroes, however, have begun to disappear into the flow of time, lost to the river of the past. I hope that we can always remember those that paid the supreme sacrifice, and that's why we say, lest we forget. Lest we forget the fallen, their sacrifice, and lest we forget what it means if we fail to share the world peacefully, something that is pertinent today amid the Israel-Hamas and Ukraine-Russia conflicts. Although these conflicts might feel safely distant from our shores, they shape the world that we live in, and they shape the values and stability of our future, the future in which my generation and our generation will be the leaders.
Please welcome William back to the lectern.
I would like to pose this question to you. Why do we hope? I'll let you think about that one for a second. Now, for example, I'm a cricket fan and imagine some of you are too. Why is it when Australia was 4 for 94 and needed 292 runs off only 128 balls, why is it that Glenn Maxwell went out and won the game for us? Now, I can gather that most answers from my previous question will consist of family, friends, pets, love, peace, etc. Let me present to you what I believe to be the answer. Why do we hope? It's purely because we shouldn't. Now let's apply it to a real-life example. My mother manages an aged care facility in the small town of Ashford, just a bit north of Inverell, both towns you probably haven't heard of because you'll blink and you'll miss them. Recently, the news has painted aged care centres as that of horrible places where people are treated poorly. Although that is the case for some, the majority of them aren't as bad as the ones you see in the news. So the government launched the trusty Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission, all well and good, a commission focused around researching ways to improve and maintain the quality of aged care facilities. The new regulation has stated that a registered nurse is required to be with the residents of the facilities 24/7 and cannot be an enrolled nurse or any lower. Simple, right? Yeah, sure, for the city facilities maybe, but like always, the rural people struggled most. So back to my mum in Ashford. She somehow, in only 6 months, needed to maintain a facility which already requires the following: a physical facility, a board of directors, management, care management, accounting management. That's 3 different levels of management. Human resources, enrolled nurses, which are the next port of call but still have to work under the supervision of registered nurses, assistants in nursing and maintenance, housekeeping, and volunteers for bingo and such. It's a facility that has 18 beds with a wait list of over 20 people. For a facility that size with the new commission laws, 6 registered nurses are required around the clock. I did one of the worst things I probably could have ever done. I sat next to my mother one time while she was a bit stressed, and she was working in the office at home, and I said to her, "You can find 6 nurses, surely." She said to me, "You tell me where I can find 6 nurses in a town with a population of 500 people and I'll give you $1 million. Let's just say my bank account hasn't budged from 27 cents. Hope still prevailed. My mother then had the bright idea to source workers from the next town over in Inverell, which she learnt doesn't even have a general practitioner currently, and a priest for that matter, so people can't even turn to God for their medical situations. For some context, only 3 of the current workers live in town. The rest, my mother included, commute for at least 1 hour from their farms at ridiculous times throughout the day, hence why my mother has single-handedly ran over more kangaroos than I can poke a stick at. But that's a story for another day. My dear mother, since then, with her management team, has found 6 registered nurses exactly 1 week before the deadline. During all this, she began studying again at Western Sydney University to become a registered nurse herself, and not to brag on behalf of my mother, but she's topping the class. I could not be prouder. Now she is a backup registered nurse if need be. But back to hope. Why, in such a dire situation, where the odds were stacked against the aged care facility 20-1, why is it they kept going on? The audacity to keep going on. The proverbial story of David and Goliath exemplifies this perfectly. Imagine you're a 30-foot tall giant towering over the land, and a mere human is challenging you to a fight. How dare he? How dare my mother and her team think they had a chance against the government? How dare Glenn Maxwell think they even had a chance against Afghanistan? How dare any other rugby league team think they have a chance against my Roosters? It all brings me to this. As a species, if we were not biologically hardwired to hope and see the silver lining in every situation, we would have gone extinct a long, long time ago. Anyone that buys a lottery ticket is fully well aware of the ridiculous odds. They know they have a better chance of getting struck by lightning. Yet again, hope prevails. Thank you all for your time, and may we all approach life with a spirit that goes beyond hope, a spirit that actively pursues success no matter the odds.
That concludes our Youth of the Year presentation for 2024. And I would ask you all to show your appreciation to these 6 brilliant I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I know it'll be said in the future, but these are 6 wonderful, inspirational young speakers that we all have the privilege to hear at our national convention every year. Okay, carry on. So look, thank you everybody. The judges will now retire to do their deliberations. We will be back at 10 to 11, I believe, where the announcement of the national winner and our best public speaker will be made. So I'll hand back over to Mick, and we'll see you all in half an hour or so.
I think there is something else to happen first.
Sneaking up on me again.
Kick you off the microphone, please. Council Chair Vin, distinguished guests, conventioneers one and all, on behalf of every Lions Youth of the Year member, we would like to thank and show our greatest appreciation to Mr. Ken Bradford for his time spent as the Lions Youth of the Year chairperson. I've had the privilege of seeing Ken at every final along the way, as we are from the same town back in Clare. But we thank you, Ken. Your efforts have been absolutely tremendous, and we wish you and Yvonne all the very best.
What can I say? I told my state coordinators they better not upset me this morning. They said they'd wait till afterwards. Look, yes, this is my last time. I think I've done it for 4 years, and I've loved every minute of it. It's been a lot of hard work, but I can tell you that I am so privileged to have met these wonderful young people over the whole time I've been doing this, even going back to my club district and state. But the young men and women who get here at the national final are absolute credit to our organisation, to themselves, to their families, and what can I say? Thank you so much, everyone.
Well done, Ken. And can I say I don't envy the judges their job. That was brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay.